is the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. And the questions have been come up because I've mentioned it several times regarding the ancestry of the people that occupy modern-day Israel as not being Jewish at all. By religion, yes, they do follow Judaism. However, the term Jew as a race, any rabbi will tell you that as far as the tribes are concerned, there's no record, which is fascinating. So had they been technically Jews by nationality, would be from the tribe of Judah. However, now we can call them Israeli, which is acceptable to our modern times. Now, what's important to understand is that it is a physical Israel. And I've said this many times, and as we preach through Galatians 3, we are aware that this passage is actually directed toward people who are bewitched by Judaism. Okay, Christians in Galatia being bewitched by Judaism. And he goes further to explain that they're not the seed of Abraham, but those who are the seed of Abraham from the promise through Jesus Christ.
The dominant view during these centuries was that God had rejected the Jewish people and replaced the Hebrew nation with the church. Unquestionably, the hostility of the people towards the Israelites affected medieval theology. Replacement theologians, they point to Galatians chapter 3, verse 29, which they say shows that sonship to Abraham is spiritual and not physical. Galatians chapter 3, verse 29, and this is what it says. And if ye be Christ, then are ye Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise?
So at the end of Galatians, it makes a very clear point to let you know that you are the seed and you are the rightful heirs to all the promises. So who are these people? Who are these people that occupy Israel and call themselves Jews and are not? Well, I've said this many times, the Khazarians. Now I'm going to talk about the Khazarians tonight, and I'm going to explain to you the history of who they are and how they ended up in what's called modern-day Israel. Now, if you just simply do a quick search, you look on Wikipedia, you'll find the Khazarians occupy many territories because they were migrants. Persians, Turkish, which is a big deal. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. Hebrew, Ukrainian, another key aspect, Russia, Hungary, Greece, and you'll find that these semi-nomadic Turk people with confederation of Turkic-speaking tribes that in the late 6th century CE established a major commercial empire covering the southeastern section of modern European Russia. The Khazars created what we're covering, Khazar created for its duration was the most powerful polity to emerge from the breakup the west of Turkic Khaganate, astride a major artery of commerce between Eastern Europe and Southwestern Asia. Khazarians became one of the foremost trading empires of the medieval world, commanding the western marches to Silk Road, playing key commercial roles, yada, yada, yada. Some centuries of 650 to 965. Determining the origins and nature of Khazarians is closely bound to theories of their languages. Okay? But this is a matter of intricate difficulty since no indigenous records of Khazarians in language. However, what we do know is one of the key languages is Yiddish. Opposing Khazarians' origins have been regarded the Bokharan Jews, Muslim Kumyks, and Cossacks of Don region, Turkic-speaking Kimchaks, Crimeans, Karaites, Moldavans, Mountain Jews, Slavonics, and others. In the late 19th century, the theory emerged that the core of today's Ashkenazi Jews descended from the hypothetical Khazarian Jewish diaspora who had migrated westward from Russia to Ukraine in modern-day France and Germany. Now, this is a theory which we're going to prove because it's actually to be done by Jewish people, the Jews themselves. So anybody who takes this stance, according to Wikipedia, anybody who takes this stance that the Khazarians are in fact the Jews of modern-day Israel will be deemed an anti-Semite and anti-Zionism. And this is actually quoted from the Wikipedia. Now, to go further, we're going to quote from the Jews of Khazaria, a book by Kevin Allen Brooke. It is certain that the Khazar Jews lived in Fangoria since over 60 tombstones bearing Jewish symbols from the 7 branches, menorahs, shofars, lulav, and other Sino-Turkic tribes and symbols. Folks, it's obvious. I mean, who else would use those symbols unless you're a Zionist, being the Star of Remphan or menorahs? I mean, there's no other culture that would utilize them. Many tombstones date to the 8th and 9th century. Khazarian tombstones of Crimean Peninsula depict the shofar, the menorah, the staff of Aaron. Again, this comes from the book called The Jews of Khazaria. Khazaria is regarded as the country of Jews. In Russia, folk literature and the Schechter letter informs us that some of Alan people, neighbors to Khazarians to the south, also adopted Judaism. And this is from a book called The Khazarian Hebrew Documents of the 10th Century, page 113 and 115. Okay? So I hope you're writing this down, folks. More evidence. Immigration of Jews to Poland started in the middle of the 9th century.
This story begins in October 1949, 1 year after Israel's formation. This is when Netanyahu was born, the second child of a historian. His paternal grandfather was a rabbi and a Zionist writer. His name was Nathan Milikowski. Later in life, he Hebraized his surname from Milikowski to Netanyahu, a name which means God has given.
This is Yair Netanyahu's DNA test that has been leaked. You can see right there his Y DNA is RM198. Descendants of RM198 come from Poland, Russia, Germany, and other European countries. Does this look Semitic to you? Does this look Middle Eastern?
More evidence. Immigration of Jews to Poland started in the middle of the 9th century. Like I stated before from the information from Wikipedia, it took place at the same time as Western Europe, and from the east, that is from the state of Khazars, whose state religion was Judaism. Khazars were situated in the vicinity of Kiev and extended to Dnistria to cease and exist in 969. And this is from the book, 1,000 Years of Jewish Life in Poland. Now, furthermore, notable modern Jews and Jewish communities who claim Khazarian ancestry. This is exciting. John Rottenberg, author of Finding Our Fathers, the guidebook to Jewish genealogy, first edition, 1977, has ancestors from Austrian and Russian, and some of his wife's ancestors were allegedly Khazarian. Karen DeWitt in the Washington Post wrote that following page of B3 in Saturday's August 20th, 1977 issue, in her article, Family Lore and the Search for Jewish Roots, the Rottenberg, who has traced his and his wife's family back to the early 1800s and found one line that goes back to Khazar's kingdom in Crimea, which dates 8th century, notes that there is only a number of Jews in the world. And Rottenberg wrote in the book Finding Our Fathers on page 45, in any case, some Eastern European Jews, perhaps a great many, are descendants from Khazars. Figuring out where you are or aren't of Khazarian ancestry may be impossible, but some families seem to have clues. For example, a branch of my wife's family named Tamarin from Russia maintains a family came into Judaism via Khazar conversion, and that the family took its name from Tamara, Queen of Georgia, in the 13th century. So, folks, we need to have this clear in our minds. I know there's a little bit of confusion when you're talking about Jews as a race. and Jews as a religion. So we have Khazarians, not Jews, who have converted to Judaism. So where are the Jews? The nation of Jews.
Yeah.
They don't exist.
Yeah,
Family of Yari, a top Israeli journalist who produced the 1997 documentary Mamalek HaKharazim, probably pronouncing it incorrectly. It also claims that Khazarian roots. Michael Azizstad in the Jerusalem Post wrote the following, page 5, in March 17, 1997 issue, in his article, An Incredible Journey to the Lost Empire of the Khazars. He was quoted as saying, and I heard that our family was some Khazarian bloodline, and for the 30 years now, I have been trying to find more information on this exciting subject. I'm a soldier in the last battle of Khazar's kingdom, a battle for the right to be remembered. And finally, I would like to secure funds to continue excavations in several places, yada, yada, yada. Some Jews at Shetokurovich in Moldova claimed Tartars' ancestries in 1923, quoting, in 1923, my father, who was born in the Jewish colonies of Baron Hirsch, visited a small town, Karlovich, near Kishinev, between Moldavia and Bessarabia, from where their parents had come to Argentina. All relatives in the town assured the family lived for 500 years. We are Jewish Tartars. Yeah. Now, going down into this article a little bit, a relative of Transylvanian Jew who was in touch with me once told him, "We are no Semites." This is a very important quote here. We are no Semites. So the whole aspect of being anti-Semitic, son, don't touch that, thank you, is ridiculous and a moot point because they're Turks.
yeah.
Now there's more point, son. No. Thank you. So again, the Turks from the Far East and homes are destroyed by the Russians. These are the Jews in the town of Sitsnu, Georgia, which is now Romania. So we have Jews, Turkish, Khazarian Jews in Romania as well. Transylvanian Jewish acquaintance found confirmation of tradition that these Jews are Turkic. Does not prove that they were the Tartans. Now, these also isolated Jews in certain towers in Ukraine and Lithuania and came to Khazarian ancestry.
Are you familiar with the Khazar theory? There's a theory, it's widely accepted as anti-Semitic, that Ashkenazi Jews come from the Khazars and they're not Levantine. But DNA tests.
It's not anti-Semitic. It's a question of fact. So Shlomo Sand, for example, has argued that, I think probably exaggerated, but it's simply a question of fact. If my ancestors from the Ukraine have Khazar roots, changes nothing. I'm Jewish. My grandfather was Jewish. My family happens to have a story saying that we're descended from the Baal Shem Tov. Okay, that's part of the culture. Doesn't matter what the DNA shows.
Stories like these contradict the opinion of Leon Lister. You don't have to be Khazarian, the 13th tribe of culture. So on page 34, talks about the Khazarian heritage. Now, I'm going to get into exactly what the significance of being Khazarian is as far as our biblical truths are concerned, but let me finish up with this from the Calling of the Lost Israel, the Khazarian Empire. The Khazars were a pagan civilization. This is going to give you a clear picture of who the Khazarians is in great detail. We're a pagan civilization, and in a short period of history became the largest, most powerful kingdom in Europe, and possibly the wealthiest also. Surprise, surprise. They're still behaving in that concord. They brought with them their religious worship that mixed the phallic worship and other forms of idolatrous worship practiced in Asia by other pagan nations. Now, if you are unaware, a significant offshoot of Judaism, being the Freemasons, practice Kabbalah magic, which is of the Jews. And what is their most significant image is the phallic symbol. In fact, they have an apron that your Masons will be wearing, and that is called, it's a covering for the holiest of holies. They worship the phallic. This form of pagan worship continued in the 7th century. Wild forms of sexual excess and lewdness. Nothing's changed with the Masons on the higher degrees, from what I'm told. Indulged by the Khazars as part of religious beliefs. This form of worship produced a large degree of moral degeneracy that Khazarians kings could no longer endure. Now, keep in mind, amongst the modern Talmudic Jews, they have some pretty lewd practices as well. In fact, I quoted from the Talmud that the Jews are allowed to consummate marriage with a child as young as 3 years old. That is in the Talmud. So King Bulan decided to end the practices of phallic worship, forms of idolatry and worship, to make one of 3 monotheistic religions. The new Khazarian state religion, after historic secession with representatives from 3 monotheistic religions, King Bulan decided not to adopt Talmudism. And this is known then and practiced today as Judaism. He chose that over Islam and Christianity. Let's see if I can give you some words. The Khazarian kings invited a large number of rabbis from Babylon and the vicinity, come to open synagogues and schools and instructed population of the new state religion. After the mass conversion, the king and his empire, none of the other so-called self-styled Jews could occupy Khazarian throne. The empire came to a virtual theocracy, with the religious leaders being the civil administrator as well. During that time, Talmud was added to or altered to protect their state religion from any other outside religious influence and prevent return of previous vile worship styles. Now, I want to stop there for just a second, because currently, if you are aware of this, I'm not sure if you are, but when Truman had declared that Israel was a state, they were originally going to say it was a Jewish state. But because of the fact that they would lose a lot of friends in the process, being it to be a theocracy and not a democracy, he declared it Israel as a state unto itself. That's a very fascinating story. And of course, there's documentation that is backing that up, signed by Truman.
What are the goals of the Zionists? What are their true intentions? This official letter signed by President Harry Truman actually answers this question. This letter proves that the true agenda of the Zionists was to create a Jewish state, a European presence in Northeast Africa, which is now called the Middle East, and not the restoration of ancient Israel. The letter reads, "This government has been informed that a Jewish state has been proclaimed in Palestine, and recognition has been requested by the provisional government thereof." Now keep in mind, provisional means arranged or existing for the present, possibly to be changed later. This means the Zionists were officially given a blank check to carry out their agenda worldwide without any pushback from other nations. Now let me start over. This government has been informed that a Jewish state has been proclaimed in Palestine, and recognition has been requested by the provisional government thereof. The United States recognizes the provisional government as the de facto authority of the state of Israel. Now, why did the late President Truman strike through Jewish state and wrote above it State of Israel? Had he not done that, the current land of Israel would actually be called Jewish state.
The ideologies of Talmud became the axis of political culture, economic and social attitudes, activities throughout the Khazarian kingdom. The Talmud provided civil and religious law. When the Khazarians in the century BC invaded the Eastern Europe, and mother tongue of Asiatic language referred to the Jewish encyclopedia as the Khazarian languages, Asiatic dialects. Now here's the fun part. They decided that they were going to change from the Khazarian language alphabet to the Hebrew characters. Now, keep in mind, all the words were distinctly different. And the present-day language of the Khazars is known as Yiddish. This is what I grew up with. Growing up in Europe, all the Jewish people spoke Yiddish. That was normal. Khazarians adopted the words required for German, Baltic, Slavic languages. Khazarians adopted a great number of words from German language. Germans had much more advanced civilization than the numbers of Khazars, so the Khazars sent their children to German schools for higher learning. And the Yiddish is not a German dialect, which you already know. Yiddish is not to be confused with Hebrew. In fact, there's no ancient word for Yiddish in Hebrew, obviously. 11th, 12th, 13th centuries, rapidly expanding Russian nation, gradually swallowed up Khazarian kingdom. After the fall of the Khazarian kingdom, the people were known as Yiddish by the Russian in Eastern Europe. They still do to this day refer to themselves as Yiddish. The year was 986 AD. The ruler of Russia, Vladimir III, became converted to Christianity in order to carry out Catholic Slavic princes of the neighboring Soviet state. Vladimir made his newly acquired Christian faith the state religion of Russia, replacing pagan worship formerly practiced in Russia. Was founded in 820 AD. Vladimir III and his successors, the rulers of Russia, attempted in vain to convert all the self-called Jews, now Russian subjects, to Russian state religion, Christianity. These Khazarian Jews in Russia refused to resist Christianity vigorously. They refused to adopt Russian alphabet in their Hebrew language, characters, writing in Yiddish language. They opposed their attempt to bring their assimilation to former Khazarian kingdom in Russia. Now keep in mind, one of their hubs was Czech Republic, which if you look in the news, there's some interesting things going on regarding the interest from Israel in Czech Republic. Jews of our era fall into a main category of Ashkenazi Jews, which is the commonly known, whom in 1960 numbered around 11 million. The term Ashkenazi Jews is associated with Germany, Hungary, and Poland. They shared culture and borders of Khazar empires, receiving a large migration of Yiddish people in this generation of Khazarian kingdom.
You say, well, where did the name Ashkenazi came from? So a little over 1,000 years ago, as Jewish people scattered around the world had now emigrated in Europe and now were living in the Rhineland in Germany, they looked at the name Gomer in Genesis 10, and they connected Gomer with Germany, so they took on the identity of the name Ashkenaz. It has nothing to do with Ashkenaz in the Bible, which is a descendant of Japhet. It's just a name that was taken. Okay, it's that simple. Just like my last name Brown doesn't refer to the color of my skin or anything else. It was shortened from a Russian name when my grandfather came over at Ellis Island. The name got shortened to Brown. It's just a name. That's all it is. So the idea that Ashkenazi Jews are descended from Japhet is a myth, 100% false, zero truth to it. Just study the history.
Sephardim Jews, who numbered 500,000 in 1960, were the descendants of Spanish Jews. Again, Spain was also covered by Khazarians. They were expelled by Spain and by Muslims in 1942. Now, that is from the article Calling Lost Israel, Khazarian Empire. To this day, the wicked religion, the satanic religion, is openly expressing their union with the devil. Every temple has the star of Remphan. Acts 7:43, yea, you took up the tabernacle of Moloch and the star of your god Remphan, figures which ye made to worship them, and will carry you away beyond Babylon. The star of Remphan is a double triangle, and the representation is that there's wisdom as above and as so below, which you'll find in a very common expression amongst many pagans, as above, so below. This image is a clear representation of what I've preached on before, the satanic religion of reason. They are utilizing the enlightenment that is presented by the author, the devil himself, who brought light, the enlightenment, the knowledge of good and evil. And you'll find that's throughout all of their writings. You have Pike wrote about it. You have people like what is that fella's name? It's on the tip of my tongue. there's a numerous number of people that were associated with the Freemasons and during that's verse 1006a says Jesus' mother was a whore. She was a descendant of princes and governed plagued the harlot and carpenters with carpenters. Also, footnote number 2, Shabbat 104b is a state that it is uncensored to text Talmud. It is written that Jesus' mother, Miriam, the hairdresser, had sex with many men. Yavamoth 49b, page 324, says Jesus was the bastard born of adultery. Sanhedrin 106a, page 725, Mary was a whore, and Jesus was an evil man. Sabbath 104b, page 504, Jesus was a magician and a fool, and his mother was an adulteress. Yes. And if there's any doubt that this is the synagogue of Satan blaspheming our Christ and all the history, these are wicked. This is a wicked religion, and anybody that is aware of this is reprobate. Now, let me stop there for just a second. I'm not saying that the entire group of people that are Israelis, people that call themselves Jews, they're all. Because just as we have Christians in our community that don't open their Bible, have any clue as to anything in it, same thing we have with Jews, same thing with Muslims.
What's your thoughts? Please be respectful with your comments. Also, please click the like, click the notification bell, and subscribe to this channel.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11, verse 10. Explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14, verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was Abraham, born in the city of a black man, called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was the, Jacob had 12 sons, for real, and these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10.